Oh, here's Andy.
Hi there. So we have some young audience members. So we're going to use PG language tonight, if that's okay.
Well,
That's what we're thinking. So, because I have a question related to that. So I am going to start recording, and then we will get started.
all right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth, the programming coordinator at the Fowlerville District Library, and I am going to moderate a discussion tonight with Andy Weir. The Livingston County Libraries have done a one book, one community program for the past 12 years. We do it to foster a sense of community through reading. And this year's book was The Martian by Andy Weir. And it's weird. And now I'm going to get started with the questions. So, Andy, what is your favorite novel?
My favorite novel, like the whole time? That's a tough one because if you ask me on any given day, I would probably give you a slightly different answer, right? But in general, my answer to that question is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. I really like that. I grew up reading the classic sci-fi novels of the 1950s and 60s because my dad had his collection of sci-fi, so there was this bookshelf that was just about 6 feet high, 3 feet wide, 1 foot deep, just jam-packed full of like 1950s and 60s sci-fis. So that's what I grew up on. So I'm going to go with iRobot.
Okay, that's awesome. Did someone tell you that you could write, or do you have to figure that out on your own?
Huh. That's weird. I never thought of it that way. Like people saying, "Oh, you could write." I guess it's more you figure it out on your own. First, you have to, want to do it, and then you start messing around with it. You've got to make a lot of bad pancakes before you make your first good one too. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, people think of me as this guy. Oh, I wrote a book, and then it was like suddenly very popular. The Martian was my third completed novel. And I've been writing for 20 years, so I wrote a lot of really crappy stuff before I wrote something good.
So I know that you put The Martian out on your website first, correct?
That's right. Originally, it was just a labor of love because I was a computer programmer. I wasn't a writer. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid. But I also like eating regular meals and sleeping somewhere other than a box. So I made the tactical decision when I was 18 to go to college for computer science. And I was a computer programmer for 25 years, but I always had the love of writing, so I was doing it kind of for fun and in my spare time and whatnot. In the late 1990s, I got laid off along with 800 other people from America Online, which kind of shows you how long ago that was. And I ended up getting a pretty decent severance package. So I took 3 years off, or, it's awesome because if you just like lose your job and then don't get a new one, you can call it a sabbatical. So I took 3 years off and took my shot at writing. I wrote a book, I tried to get it published, and that book was not The Martian. And it's a standard sob story you hear from pretty much every author. Couldn't get an agent, couldn't get any interest from publishers, just couldn't get any traction. So after 3 years, I decided, well, I tried. I at least got the opportunity to follow my lifelong goal, and back to the computer industry. And this wasn't a sad Charlie Brown music, hang your head kind of thing. I like programming computers. I built up a good skill base with it, and I enjoy doing it. So I went back into software, and from then on, writing was just a hobby for me. I wrote for fun, and I would post things to my website here and there. And one of the things, I was working on 3 serials simultaneously in 2009.
So we're having technical difficulties with you, and we lost your sound.
On my end, it seems to be okay. Like I never had a blip in Wi-Fi or in connectivity. Anyway, you can hear me now?
I can hear you now. So you were telling us that you were working, you were doing 3 serials at the same time?
Yeah, 3 serials at the same time. One of them was about a mermaid in the 19th century. One of them was about aliens invading Earth, and the other one was The Martian. and I posted The Martian one chapter at a time to my website. Over the course of about 3 years, I got it done. And then I thought about it this time. Are you hearing me?
I am. It's breaking up a little bit, but we're still hearing you.
Okay. It was good. People liked it, and so people started asking, hey, I love that you wrote this, but I hate reading a book on a website. Can you make an e-reader version? So I did that and made the e-reader version. And then other people said, hey, I love the book, I hate your website, but, which is fair, my website's awful. And they said, but I don't know, I'm not very technically savvy, and I don't know how to download a thing from the internet and put it on my e-reader. Can you just put it up on Amazon or something so that I can get it through their system? Because I know how to do that. So I figured out how to do that, and I posted it up there. It's a very simple system, very straightforward. You just put it up on Amazon, and they hang on to it for like 48 hours to have a human look at it, just to make sure you're not posting a bunch of goat porn or something. But then once you've finished that, they put it up for sale, and it started selling really well, and that's ultimately what got the attention of Random House and later Fox.
Oh, awesome. So do you think that your experience as a computer programmer factored into your writing process, or maybe your publishing process?
I wouldn't say into the writing process. No, those are completely different things, except I did write some software to help simulate some of the physics I needed to know for the book. So it helped a lot with the research process, but not in the actual, the nitty-gritty of writing. It did help a bit in the editing process once I had an editor and stuff, at Random House, because I had a lot of experience working on collaborative team projects, because that's what software engineering is. So I had the social skills to, take criticism and feedback and incorporate it and make things better and stuff. And sometimes that takes a while to learn.
Yes, it does. I agree. So what inspired you to write The Martian?
Well, I'm a science dork. I've always been a big fan of manned and unmanned spaceflight. And I was sitting down, I love doing math and physics and stuff. I mean, these are hobbies of mine. And I was sitting down thinking, okay, how can we do a manned mission to Mars? How would we get someone there? How do we get them back? How do we make sure they don't die while they're there? And I was working out all the details. And then I thought, okay, mission plans need to account for failures. What if, this thing breaks? What if this other thing breaks? What if these two things break at the same time? I mean, there needs to be like a backup plan and a backup plan to make sure the astronauts don't die. And the kind of increasingly desperate things you'd have to do to stay alive in these failure scenarios, I started to realize, hey, that would make for a pretty interesting story. So I created an unfortunate protagonist and subjected him to all of it.
Well, that's awesome. And we enjoyed it quite a bit. So what did you think of first, the problems that Mark Botany experienced or the solutions?
I would always think of the problems first. I just kind of made things up as I went along. I didn't have an outline or anything. So whenever things started to calm down a bit, I would think, all right, what's the next most likely thing to break? What's the next biggest problem? For the most part, the whole book is one cascade failure. Like, thing A breaks. So he, fixes it, but to do that, he needs to cannibalize thing B. So now thing B doesn't work. So now how does he get around that? Okay, well now, and that plus all his equipment is being forced to be used 10, 15 times as long as it was intended to last, and maintenance becomes an issue. And I would always come up with the problems first. Then I try to come up with a solution. If I couldn't figure out a solution with the materials
Nope.
Oh, we just lost your audio again. Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
I don't know why it keeps dropping out,
I
sorry.
don't know either, but you know what? I just said it's just like the novel. We have to just keep working with what we have. So how did you do the research for The Martian?
Okay. Are you getting video of me, by the way?
No.
We'll just press on. Research for The Martian. Martian. How did I do the research? Is that the question?
Yes, that was the question. Are you getting video of us?
Yeah, your video is coming just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, for me it says video is not even an option. But I'm not going to poke the Cobra. We have something that's working at the moment. So.
That's the way I look at it as well.
Yeah. How did I do the research? Mostly Google. I didn't know anyone in aerospace at the time I wrote the book. And I just got, well, I had a lifetime of being a space dork. So I had more than a layman's knowledge of this stuff. But I didn't, I'm not an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. So when I needed to know something, I'd just Google it usually. And it's pretty cool because aerospace is one of those fields where people very quickly and happily post their results online. These usually aren't industry secrets, right? They're not like, and so it's one of those things where you have access to all that information.
Right. I was gonna say, we had a NASA speaker come as part of our promotion of The Martian, and he was very generous and shared other work with us as well. So in my experience, they are very generous. So when do you think we will have people travel to Mars?
My best estimate is 2050. Now NASA says they can do it in the 2030s.
Right.
And I don't doubt that they could, but I don't think they'll get funded enough to make that happen. So I'm guessing a little more conservatively, I'm guessing around 2050. The thing is, you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose to sending humans to Mars? And that's a trickier question than most people realize, because what is the goal of sending anything to Mars? Right now, we're sending probes to Mars so we can learn about Mars. But we don't need to send humans to Mars to do that. We can send probes much more cheaply and without risking human life. If you just want to find out about geology or Mars's climatological past or Mars's atmosphere or anything else, you can do all of that with probes. And yes, an astronaut would be a lot more effective than a probe because an astronaut is so much more versatile and has a human brain on site to make decisions and so on. But with a probe, you don't have to bring it back. You don't have to keep it breathing and fed the whole way there. And if it fails, nobody dies. So why send humans at all is the real question. And my answer to that is, the reason to send humans to Mars is so that we can learn how to send humans to Mars. Because we should have a long-term goal of having a permanent human population somewhere other than Earth. Because that basically guarantees that we never go extinct. As long as we're all on a single planet, we have a non-zero, it's a small chance, but there's a chance that our entire species could go extinct due to some disaster, meteor strike, a war, a plague, who knows. But if we have a self-sufficient population on Mars or the moon or something like that, then the odds of extinction drop to almost zero. So the reason to send people to Mars is to figure out how to send people to Mars. That should be the goal. Yeah, so it's kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah, I'm guessing 2050 for the first manned mission.
Okay. So another related question, actually it's related to your couple. Would the astronauts have taken sterilized potatoes to Mars that would not have sprouted?
They didn't take sterilized potatoes, they just took potatoes.
Okay. Well, the question, I think, the person who submitted the question, I think, thinks that they would have taken sterilized potatoes. I don't know what kind of potatoes
It's likely.
he hasn't said.
Well, you could buy, well, if you imagine you just buy a sack of potatoes from the store, they can keep for a pretty long time, especially if they're in a cool, dry place. And they don't require any special treatment. I mean, you don't have to care for them. They don't really rot very well. They're very hardy. And if you leave them alone too long, they'll start sprouting eyes, right? They'll start sprouting on their own.
So correct. So another person asked if you would like to go to Mars. Okay, I think we lost Andy Weir.
There he is. He's coming up.
Are we back?
We are
All right.
back.
Video.
Yep, I don't know. Oh, we can get it into it.
It's just a roll of the dice.
Yes. So, if one of our patrons would like to know if you would like to go to Mars.
The answer is no. No, I I write about great people. I'm not one of them. I'm more one of the guys in mission control type of people.
Okay. So, do you know why The Martian as a movie was considered a comedy?
The best answer to that is that the Hollywood Foreign Press, which is the entity that determines who gets which Golden Globes, really pretty much just hands Golden Globes out to whoever they want to meet the most.
Oh.
It really is sort of a questionable process. And I guess they wanted to meet Matt Damon and Ridley Scott.
Were you happy with the music that was added to the movie?
Yes, the cinematic music, Harry Gregson Williams, I think is his name, the composer. I thought that was all beautiful, just beautifully evocative. And then, of course, gotta love all the disco.
Yes. One of our patrons read that you don't like. I was very distracted by you doing the disco.
That's what you should be.
And that you didn't attend filming in Bulgaria. Did you have a chance to meet your cast members otherwise?
Yes, I am afraid to fly, and that's true. I'm getting better at it through medication and therapy. But no, I didn't go to, and it wasn't Bulgaria, it was Budapest, Hungary.
Okay.
I did not go to watch them film. I was invited to, but yeah, fear of flying, didn't want to go out there. Also not willing to fly out to Jordan, which is where they filmed the exteriors, all the stuff that's out in the desert. I met the cast many times. There were a lot of media events and things like that in the U.S. that I attended. And I was there for the red carpet opening in Toronto, which I did fly to, but it's a much shorter flight than, Hungary. And yeah, so I got to hang out with the cast quite a lot.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I had another patron ask me, in reference to your knowledge on a wide variety of subjects in the book, how does one person know so many things?
It's my hobby, they say you write what you know. I wouldn't be able to tell you the first damn thing about drag racing, but a gearhead who's like way into, cars and someone who's like way into muscle cars and stuff like that could probably write you a really detailed and accurate story about drag racing, right? So it's just a matter of what you're into and what you know and what you've spent your life kind of, unintentionally getting knowledgeable on. And in my case, that's space stuff.
Okay. Well, personally, I was wondering if you could tell us more about your current writing project.
Sure. My next project is, I don't have a title for it yet. It takes place, it's another scientifically accurate sci-fi story. I seem to have accidentally carved out a niche audience of hard sci-fi fans, so I'm gonna roll with it. It takes place in a city on the moon. It takes place in maybe the 2080s-ish era. I put a lot of time and effort into coming up with the economic foundation for this city, like why it exists and why, why there is a city on the moon in the first place. And I've got a pretty solid explanation for that, I think. The main character is a woman who is kind of a low-level criminal in that city. So I'm going for the kind of lovable road kind of character for her. This is also, it's not actually the first time I've ever written a female lead character, but actually my second book, the main character is a woman, but this is the first time where I'm, writing a book that's definitely going to get published and have wide readership. And so I'm a little nervous about that because I hope I can portray a convincing female lead. I'm not a woman myself, so I hope it doesn't just look like, I hope it comes across legitimately, you know what I mean?
Right. Patron from Pickney would like to know, why do you use a radioactive metal in the rover to keep warm? What would be the chances of serious radiologic effects?
Pretty much zero. The question is asking about the RTG. And the way RTGs work is they have an extremely radioactive...
Yet again. So, well, we're working now.
Okay,
So,
so
awesome. All right.
Now you have line of number 2. Because
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, new friends. That's awesome.
New friends. There you go.
So you were explaining to us why You were explaining to us RTG was
Right, why the RTG was safe. Yeah, so the RTG is actually a bunch of lead pellets. You know, a real RTG is actually a whole bunch of little lead pellets, each one of which has a small amount of that radioactive material inside. And so the lead stops the radiation and ultimately just gets hot. And so the real danger of an RTG is that it's hot all the time and cannot be cooled down. You cool it down, it just gets hot again. So that part is a little bit dangerous, but it's no dangerous than, like, I don't know, having a burner on your oven all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, RTGs are actually quite safe, which is why I didn't introduce any serious threats for it.
Okay. So how close is Mark Watney's character to your own personality?
Pretty much the same. He's definitely based on my own snarky personality. Although he's more the idealized version of me, right? He doesn't have any of my flaws. He doesn't have my, you know, anxieties and neuroses and whatnot. And he's smarter than I am. So he's kind of what I wish I could be. And I think you'll find that a lot in main characters. Main character of any given story is usually someone usually someone the author wants to be or someone the author wants to have sex with. Don't believe me? Look through your books and ask yourself. It's usually pretty clear which.
Somebody from Pickney would like to know if any of the science is real from the book.
Yes, all of the science, except for with a couple of exceptions, all of the science is real. In fact, I even calculated the orbital trajectories that they took and so on to be as accurate as possible. Sorry, part of my chair just fell off. Yes, so a couple of things that were inaccurate were the dust storm or the sandstorm right at the beginning is not realistic. In reality, sandstorms on Mars have a very Mars's atmosphere is extremely thin. It's about 1/200th of Earth's atmospheric pressure, and so while it does get winds up to 150 kilometers an hour, the inertia, the force behind those winds, is extremely small because the air is so thin. So it would barely be able to knock over a piece of paper, let alone a 27-ton spacecraft. That was something I knew at the time when I was writing the book. I knew that that was the case, but I just kind of accepted that, and I said, like, nobody knows this. And, you know, it's funny, you sense that.
You go back, by the way.
People were talking about it, the scientists were talking about it, now everybody knows that that's unrealistic. So I've inadvertently educated America on the realities of Mars's climate, which is cool, I guess. The other thing that I just kind of hand-waved away was I said that the HAB material, the material his base is made out of and stuff like that, is just like radiation-proof, radiation-resistant. In reality, that's a huge problem for interplanetary exploration. Earth's magnetic field protects us from what are called GCRs and solar radiation. In other words, the sun is emitting a bunch of particles, just spitting it out in all directions. Earth's magnetic field bends the paths of those particles around the planet. What few particles do get through have a tough time getting to the surface because we have a very thick atmosphere. Also, the galaxy in general is spitting very high energy particles all over in all directions. Those are called GCRs, which stands for galactic cosmic rays, which is a terrible name because they're not cosmic rays, they're particles. But
I don't really know what's affecting our call. All of our county is staying together. I don't know. There's something because it is. I don't know. I don't know if maybe something's going on in the middle of the country that would affect it. I don't know. So you were telling us about the radiation. They have.
Yeah. So anyway, GCRs, which are called galactic cosmic rays, they come from all directions. They're very dangerous, but Earth's magnetic field, again, protects us from most of it. The sun's magnetic field actually protects us from a lot of it. And then our atmosphere serves as like a buffer, dramatically limiting how much of it gets to the surface. Mars does not have a magnetic field, and Mars has practically no atmosphere. So you get a kind of an unhealthy dose of radiation on Mars. There's actually been somebody who wrote a paper on how much radiation dosage the Ares 3 crew would have had, like a scientific paper. And actually, it's interesting, Mark is much better off than the rest of the crew. The rest of the Ares 3 crew would have gotten a lot more radiation because they spent that whole time out in space while Mark spent most of his time on Mars. And when you're on Mars, the planet Mars itself blocks half of the radiation that's coming at you. Everything that's coming from below is blocked by an entire planet of mass, and it turns out that's a pretty good shield. But the people aboard the Hermes were just constantly bombarded by radiation the whole time.
So are those the only inaccuracies that you noticed?
Those are the only inaccuracies that were that I knew about. And then what happened is after I released the book, new information came to light about Mars that invalidated some other aspects of the story. Most notably, at the time I wrote the book, and at the time that I wrote the book, the commonly held belief was that Mars was completely dry, that there was some water maybe at the poles, and that's it. But there wasn't like useful amounts of water anywhere, which is why Mark had to go through all these extremely dangerous chemical procedures to make water out of leftover rocket fuel. But I finished The Martian in 2012, and shortly thereafter, like in the real world, Curiosity landed on Mars, the Curiosity probe, and scooped up the ground and said, like, oh, there's a crap load of water in here. It turns out that there's an enormous amount of ice in ice crystals suffused within the Martian soil. If you were to fill your refrigerator with Martian dirt and then desiccated out all the water, you would have 35 2-liter bottles full of water. So that's how much water there is in the soil of Mars. And it's really easy to get out, too. You just take dirt and heat it up, and then the water will boil up, and then you've got it. And so, yeah, that completely invalidated that plotline. But at the time I wrote it, the current site, I mean, you could have gone to all the scientists in the world. They would have said, yeah, that's accurate, for what we knew. Another fun one is, in the book, I specify the exact location of the HAB, of the Ares 3 landing site, where Mark spends most of his time. And I gave it the exact latitude and longitude and stuff like that. Well, the University of Arizona controls an instrument aboard Mars Global Surveyor, which is a satellite that, in the real world, is a satellite in orbit around Mars. And they control this instrument called HiRISE. And the HiRISE instrument is a really, really high-resolution camera that they take pictures of the surface of Mars with. It's basically a spy satellite. It is exactly a spy satellite. And they can take pictures with a resolution of 1 square foot per pixel, meaning they take a picture and you look at the picture you get, each pixel in that image is 1 square foot of the surface of Mars. So that's actually a very, very high resolution image. And so they took a really high-res image of the landing site, right? And of the Ares 3 landing site because, because they're nerds and they enjoyed the book. And they took a picture and went like, well, this doesn't look anything like Andy described it. Well, screw you.
Were you happy with the film adaptation? And did you get to give input on it? Okay, so were you happy with the film adaptation, and how much input did you get to have?
I'm thrilled with the adaptation. It's awesome. I mean, it follows the book very closely, which a lot of movies don't. And I thought Matt Damon's performance was just spectacular. I mean, he absolutely nailed the character of Mark Watson. He came out exactly the way I hoped. Yes, I did end up having a lot of input. The screenplay was written or adapted by Drew Goddard, who's a veteran Hollywood screenplay writer and director. And he was on the phone with me almost every day while he was working on that. And then while they were filming, I would get the occasional question from Ridley. Usually, always, in the case of Ridley, it was always technical stuff. Like, can we show Mark pouring hydrazine from one container to another out on the surface of Mars? I'm like, no, it would boil off in that atmosphere. And he's like, oh, okay, no problem. So that sort of stuff. But yeah, those, I get that question a lot. Like, how much did you have to do with the production of the movie? Well, my main job on the film was to cash the check. I feel like I did a pretty good job on that.
Well, I'm sure that was fun too. My next question from Jeff, I don't know which library he's from, is now that you've had a book made into a movie, do you think about how your current work would be made into a movie? Does it color your writing?
No, it really doesn't, because, yeah, I just don't think along those lines. If I want to write a movie, I'll write a screenplay.
Okay.
And I am working on a screenplay right now. I mean, so that second book that I was talking about, I'm messing around with that a bit as a potential screenplay. Also, I'm pitching a TV show that's some new content. Who knows if anybody in Hollywood will be interested, but I've kind of got my foot in the door, so I'm trying to take advantage of my 15 minutes of fame while I have it.
That's awesome. I have a follow-up question to go with that. So have you considered writing a Doctor Who episode? Have you been asked to? Because I know you write fan fiction.
I would love to. I would do it for free. I'd do it with whatever constraints or restrictions they wanted. I would love it. I doubt BBC is going to get on the phone and call me up anytime soon for that, but boy, if they did, I'd be all over it. I would adore that. That'd be awesome.
That would be fun to do, yes.
Oh, I'd love it.
So, Pat from Hamburg would like to know, where are you right now during the Skype call?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles at a hotel near LAX. I'm down here. I live up in Mountain View, California, near San Jose. It's up in Silicon Valley. But I'm in LA right now because I'm meeting with Elon Musk later today. Which is why I have to leave this call.
I know that your time is limited today, so.
But yeah, that's why I'm here. And actually, speaking of fear of flying, I flew in this morning. So. Yeah.
So you're doing good. You're working on that.
I'm doing well. I found that I'm doing long-term, and by the way, I don't mind talking about any of this stuff. I have like a problem with general anxiety. I have like general anxiety disorder, and I'm always very open with that about people because a lot of people have this problem and they shouldn't be embarrassed by it. So I kind of hope that they'll see me and go like, well, maybe I can get help too. Just therapy and medication. Even as recently as like 10 years ago, the general approach for anxiety was suck it up, you big baby. That was kind of the professional approach that people had. Or do deep breathing exercises. But now they started to treat it with antidepressants because it turns out depression and anxiety are kind of the same sets of weird chemical reactions going on in your brain. So anti-anxiety, pills, like long-term antidepressants. I don't have a problem with depression, but they work well against anxiety. And therapy, and then for the planes, Valium.
Is there any questions you've never been asked that you would like to answer? Something you'd ever want to share?
I don't think there's any questions I haven't been asked.
Okay, I got one for
It
you.
comes immediately to mind.
Okay, well, I have a question that has been texted to me. Why do you think Aquaman can talk to whales?
I have been given answers to this by many concerned fans who felt it was important that I know. The reason Aquaman can telepathically communicate with whales is because
Perfect spot. He's doing this on purpose. I swear. Did you get your question about the end of the movie?
I'm sorry?
The fact that the movie had that ending that wasn't in the book.
I don't know. I can ask again. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, that was like
Yeah.
an addition that wasn't in the book.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I can ask that again.
I am going to, just as an experiment, I'm going to decline your guys' video feeds. So you can see me, right?
I can see you, yeah. We can
Okay. So what I've done is I I've turned off your video feed, so I only see you, Beth, as a video feed, and maybe that'll help. You know, that'll reduce the bandwidth coming in my computer, I don't know. Anyway, so the reason Aquaman can control whales is because Aquaman is actually an incredibly powerful telepath all across the board. Not just with sea life, with everything. He can, in fact, use his telepathy on people. He can mentally communicate with people. He has tremendous mental defenses. Psychics and telepath villains have been unable to penetrate his mind in the past because of the strength of his psychic powers. So the reason he usually talks to sea life is because he has more experience with it, but he's not limited to it. So that's why he can control whales, simply from familiarity and experience. So there you have it. I've had that answer sent to me by many, many concerned DC fans.
Have you ever read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss?
No, I haven't. But I assume the name of the wind is Mariah. That's what they call the wind.
So I have a question from Jessica Foldings from Hamburg. Do you have any tips for young authors?
Yes, I have 3 tidbits of advice for people trying to break in. Number 1, if you want to be an author, you have to actually write things. I know that sounds obvious, but it isn't. A lot of people imagine these stories and they come up with all the cool things that are going to happen in their head, and they come up with an outline in their mind, and they're like, ooh, this scene's going to be awesome, that scene's going to be awesome, but they never actually write anything down. In order to be a writer, you have to write things down. Until you actually write it down, it's just a daydream. So get to work, sit down, and start typing. And it sucks when you do that, because then like the shape it takes while you're writing doesn't match the awesome, perfect version you had in your mind. That's when you start to find all the little flaws, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I have to start this story with like 50 pages of backstory about the history of this land I've come up with, and that's boring. And that's when you start to discover all these problems. So you have, number 1, you have to actually write. Number 2, and this one's very hard, resist the urge to tell your friends and family about your story. And that's very hard. Most writers, not all, but most writers are driven by a desire to have an audience. You want to know that other people are experiencing this story or this concept that you came up with. I mean, that's certainly my motivator, and it's most other authors' motivators as well. When you tell your story to your friends and family, especially if they're clearly interested, they're not just placating you or being polite, when they're like, oh, whoa, that is awesome, tell me more. When that happens, it satisfies your need for an audience and saps your will to write. It makes it so that you never bother writing it down because you've already gotten that satisfaction of having an audience. So if you actually want to get something done, make yourself a rule that says, like, no one ever gets to find out what I'm writing until they read it. The only way that I can share my story is by handing people a file or a sheaf of papers. So make that rule for yourself, and it'll help motivate you to get more writing done. And then the third and final piece of advice is, there has never been a better time to self-publish. There is no longer an old boy network between you and the readers. Self-publishing systems like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or just the internet, just straight up posting chapters online, removes the publisher from the equation. And you can become successful without ever having validation from a traditional publishing house. So that's what I have to say on that.
So another patron says that they love your sense of humor. Doing the book a movie, did you ever believe someday that man would make the trip? You know, think outside the box, the big universe. Great movie, thanks.
So
The question, I think, was when you were writing the book, did you believe that man would someday make that trip? I think that I just lost you again. All right, I will call you again. Hello. I decided I was just going to call you on my own, and that wasn't right. So.
Yeah, a whole bunch of weird stuff happened there.
So, I think the question was whether or not you, when you were writing it, believed that,
We would go to Mars?
yes, that we would go to Mars.
Yes, I definitely believe we'll go to Mars. It's just a matter of time. If you think about it, we will eventually go to Mars. Just some lady or gentleman explorer will go to Mars on their own once the technology makes it affordable to, once it makes it cheaper and cheaper. The analogy I like to use for that is the saddle. If you think about a modern day saddle for like horse riding, it is a technological wonder. It's made of carbon composite, it's made of nylon straps, it's made of material that's comfortable for both the animal and the rider. It's completely weatherproof, it'll last your whole life. The stirrups are made of stainless steel. I mean, everything in a modern saddle is awesome. They really, really could have used that in the 1800s. But they didn't have that technology. And it's not like the US government said, we need to invest billions of dollars in saddle research. What happened was all of these technologies that go into a modern saddle were invented by other entities for other reasons. And saddle makers said, oh, hey, that new thing that just got invented, that would make saddles better. So I think what will eventually happen is even if there wasn't a huge uptick in space research or funding, new technologies get developed all the time, and bit by bit we will, if for no other reason, accidentally invent the things necessary to drive down the price of space travel. And then eventually, I mean, it would get so cheap that a government would be like, well, crap, it only costs us $1 billion to do a manned Mars mission. Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So if you were trapped on Mars with no problems, how would you spend your free time?
With no problems?
Just up there having a good time.
I think I would spend my free time working out how to get home, but if I was on Mars, my free time, boy, I guess I'd probably write.
Okay. So how did NASA react to your book?
They were overwhelmingly supportive. They were just thrilled about the book. Of course, they liked several things about it. They liked the scientific accuracy and the realistic portrayal for how manned spaceflight works. And also, I'm sure it doesn't hurt that they come off as total heroes. So I'm sure they're pretty happy about that. Yeah, they invited me out. They invited me out to Houston. Hey, Howell, your microphone's on. Howell Library, your microphone is on. Okay, I guess it's off now. Yeah, they were very happy about it. They invited me out to Houston too. I got to go spend like 4 days getting VIP tours and stuff of Houston. It was great. Of Johnson Space Center. Yeah.
So how do you feel about the movie version changing the end of your story?
Well, they had to be a little more cinematic. I mean, it's very pragmatic. When you've got a star of Jessica Chastain's caliber, you want to use her as much as possible. And so they wanted her to be the one who rescues Mark instead of Dr. Beck, who does it in the book. So that makes sense from a cinematic drama standpoint, and also it's more exciting to have the captain of the ship go out and save her crew. It's more captain-y, And then finally it closes the loop on the plot of like she felt really guilty for leaving him behind. So it was. I didn't have a problem with it. My only minor whingy, gripey whine about it is that Commander Lewis. My vision of Commander Lewis is she never ever makes an emotional decision. She always does what is best for the mission, for the crew.
Do you see us? Do the way.
Nah.
We lost you again. I'll try to get you back.
Well, he is going to be interviewed by Elon Musk soon. Elon Musk is supposed to be interviewing with him. That's why he has to leave. SpaceX. Tesla. Yeah. Elon Musk.
And I'm
Yep.
trying to get Andy back.
Yep.
What was your whine about the?
Andy,
Yes.
my whine is that my vision of Commander Lewis is that she never makes an emotional decision. She always makes logical, rational decisions. My version of Commander Lewis. And but in the movie, she makes this kind of emotional decision. She's like, no, I'm going to go out there and get it myself because I don't want to risk another crewmate, in this case Beck. I can't handle losing another one. But that is an irrational decision. Dr. Beck is the EVA expert. He's more qualified than she is to go rescue Mark. He's better at it. This is his specialty. And so that is an irrational decision by Lewis, and that's my only gripe, is that my Lewis doesn't make irrational decisions ever.
Okay. And that's how you wrote that character, so.
Yes. Commander Lewis is a very good commander. She also has the unquestioning loyalty and respect of her crew, right, throughout the whole book. No one ever once questions a single decision she makes, and they have 100% support, respect, and admiration for her, without ever, questioning it. And I didn't like at the very beginning of the story, when it shows them doing the evac, Lewis is like, all right, prep for evac, prep for emergency launch, we're scrubbing. And Mark argues with her. He's like, wait, Commander, range. She's like, no, we're scrubbing. I didn't like that. I didn't like that Mark argued with her.
Okay.
Because my version of Lewis, she has such a command presence that no one would ever argue with her.
Right.
And not because they're intimidated, but because they respect her so much.
That's what I was going to say, because they have respect for their commander.
Tremendous, yeah.
Yes. So do you have an interest in botany?
Me personally, no. No, not at all. Actually, I have sort of a brown thumb. I mean, anything I try to grow just drops dead.
Okay, so I only have one last question, and because we're also having technical difficulties, and I know that you have a time crunch, I'm going to ask the last question and then let you go.
Okay.
So how inconvenient would a friction-proof suit be for the Flash? How effective would his suit realistically be?
If it was friction, I mean, some part of it has to have friction.
Yeah.
I mean, so maybe you say the soles of his feet have to have some amount of friction, right? Something. But the rest of the suit having no friction would be really cool and pretty much necessary for the speed that the Flash runs. He would also need to have some friction on the fingertips or hands if he wants to be able to grip things. But other than that, I mean, being in a frictionless suit would be like being completely greased up head to toe and then trying to move around or grab things. You wouldn't be able to do anything.
Especially at that speed, so.
Yeah, right. So I would say a 100% friction-free suit, no, that's no good. But a suit that is almost entirely friction-free with just maybe around the feet and stuff, that would be good. However, even if it has a coefficient of friction of actually 0, even if it has a theoretical minimum friction, he would still have all sorts of problems with if he's running 50 times the speed of sound, there would be a shock wave, a pressure wave of air in front of him that would be vaporizing things nearby. I mean, it would be. So it's not just the friction-free suit.
Okay. I'm just going to make sure that there's nothing I missed. Okay, so how did you decide on the opening line? I'm pretty much the F-word, which, it is very much in context for the situation. We do have a younger audience as well.
Yeah. I chose that line. It was actually the first line I wrote. I wanted to convey Mark's personality as, right away. I have a real philosophy on the first page or so of the book is that you have one sentence to convince the reader to read the first paragraph. Then you have that one first paragraph to convince the reader to read the rest of the page. If they turn the page, you've probably got them for a chapter. And so it's like starting a car. It's like this little ignition process to pull in the reader's interest. So the very first sentence has to really grab them. And so I wanted something with some zing to it.
I'm going to take this and say goodbye, and thank you so much for being your time.
we might still have some of the extra business cards that has his contact information, and as you can tell from his interview, he will answer just about anything. Thanks for coming. I'm so glad you guys are here. We still have some food, and it's not 8 o'clock yet. So thank you. Thank you for coming.